of the Watchtower Apologists who are out in the open trying to tell you to let these humans, the governing body, enslave you, to completely trust them, right? There's no difference then, right, between God, Jesus, and them. If it's complete trust, that you don't get more than complete. So they want you to trust them completely, like I explained previously, because they're losing control. And if you don't trust them completely, they're going to lose control. And that's what's happening. And so their apologists are just in a frenzy right now, trying to justify the most ridiculous positions out there, including completely trusting in people who have made more mistakes when it comes to interpreting God's word than most other people. That's who they want us to completely trust. They want us to completely trust them as the truth, when they're not the truth. John 14:6 tells us who's the truth, right? And I was thinking about this too, when I used that text in relation to Luke 21:8 in my prior videos, to show that they claim the title of the Messiah, the truth, when they couldn't possibly be the truth. And he is. While proclaiming the end is near. I mean, it's like almost as explicit as you could get of an identification with those false teachers there in Luke 21:8. But then I started thinking, after getting a bunch of just ridiculous comments by Watchtower Apologists, and by the way, Watchtower Apologists and ardent supporters who just don't listen to the Bible anymore, I'm probably just going to ban you and delete your comments from here forward. Just like with a bunch of Trinitarian apologetic nuts, because if I can't tell you're really thinking and you're just blatantly ignoring the Bible, I don't have time for that. I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to let you take my time up defending things that are not in the Bible. And especially when it comes to defending an organization that should know better by now. But I started thinking about it as I was reading some of these recent comments, and I realized they do it elsewhere as well. Can you think of another way the society claims to be the Christ, in addition to proclaiming the end is near, like Luke 21:8 warned us about? Can you think of another way they do that besides being the truth? And my good friend and brother Everett point out that in Luke 21:8 it could also be they're claiming to be anointed while proclaiming the end is near, which I believe is true. But what else? Let me show something to you. This came to my mind just this morning. I've thought about it before, but after reading some of the, ridiculous attempts to defend some of the things taught by the Watchtower by some of their apologists recently, I thought about this. Check this out. Don't they do it here as well? Look at this. John 6:66. Owing to this, many of his disciples went off to the things behind and would no longer walk with him. Therefore Jesus said to the 12, you do not want to go also, do you? Simon Peter answered him, Lord, whom shall we go away to? You have the sayings of everlasting life. And we have believed and come to know that you are the Holy One of God. Now, if you've been involved with the Watchtower at all, you know that the way they interpret this text is totally different than what we just read. They'll quote it. In fact, let's go ahead and I looked up several. I found a ton. In fact, I didn't even finish them all. I found so many. I was like, this is incredible. I got to share this. I would encourage you, if you're trying to help Watchtower witnesses and others, recognize what they're being taught, look up this account in their literature and you'll see what I'm going to show you right now, what they're being taught. Okay, so we can very clearly see, right? Whom, a person, in fact, you, Jesus, the Holy One of God. This is very clear. There's no complication here. It's not hard to read. There's no textual variance. Nothing. Well, here's what the Watchtower has to say. Watchtower 2006, February 15th, page 30, paragraph 21, walking in the path of increasing light. Listen, accepting a change when it comes and adapting to it can be difficult. Yeah, especially when you tell us that you're the truth and that you're proclaiming God's promise, and then you end up telling us something different. That can be difficult. It should be difficult because you're not supposed to do it. Admits one longtime elder, what has helped him accept the many refinements he has witnessed in the 48 years he has been a kingdom proclaimer? He answers, having the right attitude is key. Now, is the right attitude like Revelation 2:2, that if we find people lying to us, we openly confront them, and Jesus approves us for doing that, like in that text? Is having the right attitude, like in Galatians 1 and 2, that when we see people, even if they've been appointed by the Lord, like Peter, teaching what is false and not supporting the truth and misleading other people, is the right attitude to be like Paul and confront them? No. Having the right attitude is key. Refusing to accept a refinement is to be left behind as the organization moves ahead. This is an active witness telling you what's helped him deal with all these changes for 48 years. If I find myself in a situation where changes seem hard to accept, like not being supported by the Bible, I reflect on Peter's words. Okay, this is the key part here. This is why I brought up this text. I believe it shows clearly they have replaced the Messiah with themselves. Not just in John 14:6, by calling themselves the truth when they could not possibly be this. I reflect on Peter's words to Jesus, the 48-year witness says, at least having dealt with this for 48 years, Lord, whom, that's correct, right? We just read it up here. That's good. So they quote it correctly. But then they just change it. It's like the Trinitarians when they quote a text using God. They didn't just change the meaning of God to be either the Trinity or a person of God. And then that's not in the text. And so we're like, well, they're using God, but they don't really mean God. It's that same thing here. Lord, whom shall we go away to? You have sayings of everlasting life. Then I asked myself, okay, so the Watchtower witness here is saying, I quote this text that we just read from John 6:68 specifically. When I'm having trouble dealing with all the changes in the Watchtower, I remind myself about that text, Lord, whom shall we go away to? You have the sayings of everlasting life. Then, instead of stopping right there and going to the Lord Jesus, they turn around, and in this case, he asks himself, where? Where shall I go away to? Out there? In the darkness of the world? This reflection on Peter's words to Jesus causes him to ask where instead of whom. And then instead of going to the whom, it helps him to hold firmly to God's organization. Boom. Right there. They have replaced themselves with the Messiah, or the Messiah with themselves. And their followers do the same thing because that's what they're taught. They know the text. It's not about being ignorant of John 6:68. Doesn't matter. It's just like with the Trinitarians and them not being ignorant of 1 Corinthians 8:6. They just change the meaning of the term. They're replacing Jesus, the whom, with God's organization, the where. How is that not claiming to be the Christ? Because if he's the whom that you're supposed to go to, why are you replacing it with a where? God's organization that you believe you are. It's the same thing with the truth. They're replacing the Messiah with themselves. He's the truth, they're the truth. Whom else shall we go away to? Where else shall we go away to? It's pretty explicit, wouldn't you say? But let's take a look. Let's read a few more. Watchtower, 1997, October 1st, page 32. Where else but in Jehovah's organization can we find such unselfish expressions of compassion, concern, and love? And people who are asking you to completely trust them in defiance of the text. Most people today can count on one hand the number of real friends they have. Real friends don't abandon other people for liars. Real people don't abandon the Messiah. Real friends, I should say, don't abandon the Messiah for liars. I don't think they understand what a real friend is. But this is the thinking that goes into the reflection that leads to the substitution of whom with where. They do it again here, 1994 Watchtower, January 1st. I'm very grateful to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Where else? Where else can we find promises of everlasting life and paradise in the near future and now? Balm for our souls. Thank you a million times. Thank you. Well, you can find it in the Bible. You can find it if you go to Jesus. Right? So they're claiming they represent Jesus, but they don't. That's lying. We understand if you actually represent Jesus, that rejecting him means rejecting them means rejecting him. Did the Christians in Revelation 2:2 refuse to put the liars who claim to be apostles to the test because the apostles said, we represent Jesus. You can't question us. You reject us. You reject him. No. So those of you commenting in my chat as if the Watchtower Society represent Jesus, that's not true. We've shown that already. So if you want to assume that, just so it makes you feel better about not rejecting liars, well, the liars in Revelation 2:2 could have said the same thing to those approved by Jesus for rejecting their claims and making sure of all things, holding fast to that which is fine, not lies. All right, let's get to a couple more and we'll get to our main show. But let's get to a couple where they get back to John 6. Watchtower, 1973. If we truly appreciate Jehovah's earthly organization, we will remain loyal to it. Knowing that the organization is his. How do we know that? We wouldn't know that because nothing shows that. You've made false prediction after false prediction and changed so many interpretations. There's no way you should be claiming this. Not then and not now. Only now you're asking for complete trust, which is similar to then as well. And so you've been off the path for a long time, Watchtower. That doesn't mean everything you've done is bad. I'm going to talk about some good things you've done in just a few minutes. These things are bad. You're not supposed to be asking for this kind of loyalty. You're supposed to be encouraging people to test you. And if they find you to be a liar, like asking us to completely trust you, or replacing Jesus with you as the truth, or replacing Jesus with you as the place to go versus the person to whom you should go, we have the right to test you, to find out whether these things are so. And if you try to stop us, that proves you're not representing Jesus. He approves those who test those who claim to be sent by Jesus. Revelation 2:2. Paul did it to someone no one questions was appointed by Jesus. So even if the Watchtower was appointed by Jesus in 1919, so what? So was Peter. Did Peter say, hey, Paul, guess what? I've been here before you. I was appointed. You're not supposed to be correcting me. You're supposed to be loyal. You reject me, you're rejecting the Messiah, Paul. No, he didn't do that, did he? Why? Because he knows men lie. All of us. So why would any liar pretend to be the truth? Incredible. And ask for loyalty at the same time, too. Peter didn't do that. And Paul went right up to him to his face and said, you stop that. You're teaching false doctrine. You're misleading people. I don't care if you've been appointed. If you've been appointed, why don't you do what you were appointed to do? That's in the Bible, Galatians 1 and 2. That's in the Bible, Revelation 2:2. What you're teaching, Watchtower Apologists and supporters, is not in the Bible, and it's not consistent with it. If we were to leave it, where else would we go? Okay, this is leading up to John 6 in this very paragraph. There is no other organization doing the divine will or that is educating people for everlasting life. There was never said to be an organization that was only doing that. Even the Christian congregation, Revelation 2:2, had false apostles in it, consistent with Matthew 13, that what? Would have wheat and weeds in it. The whole world. From that time forward, the kingdom of God has become like a field in which a man planted wheat, but an enemy came in and sowed weeds among the wheat. And the reapers, who are angels, went to the master and said, should we go get those weeds out of your field? What did the master say, Watchtower supporters? No. No. No, he said you let them grow together. So we test people, and when we find out they're liars, then we reject them. Unless they comply and start teaching the truth again like Peter. If Peter would have said, Paul, I don't care what you say. I'm going to keep going this way with these brothers from James, and I'm just going to keep staying with the Jews and not the Gentiles, and I'm going to do my thing. I was appointed, okay? Then Paul would have rejected Peter, like we should too. Only Peter had enough humility to realize he was going the wrong way. The Watchtower Society doesn't have that humility. They've never stepped down and said, you know what? Let someone else have their day. We're done. We've blown it so many times and so badly. Nobody respects us anymore when it comes to these things. We're kind of a joke now. And we're dragging the divine name in the Bible through all these terrible teachings that we've promoted in God's name. We're just going to step down now. Let's let some other brothers come in who haven't failed as badly as we have over such a long period of time. We just don't want to bring this much reproach on the name anymore. We're going to be like Peter, and we're going to step aside or start doing things right. No, they can't do that. They just can't let go. Terrible. And besides, Watchtower people, like I said at the start of the show, this is no longer the case, even if it ever was in the past century of this one. We're here now. We don't need you. We never did need you. And we're proclaiming the divine name. We're teaching the truth about the God of the Bible. We're teaching the truth about the Messiah and about how to treat each other the right way. And we give each other freedom because we trust each other. that if you believe those things, you can figure out the rest. We don't need a group of people telling us every single little thing to do and then a whole bunch of other stuff too that's not taught in the Bible. You try confronting the Watchtower Society today about what's in the Bible, you're not going to get more than maybe a minute. Once they sense you're contradicting what they teach, you're out, or you're under suspicion, you're marked. We all know that's true. So the Watchtower apologists and liars today out promoting these kinds of things, they're the worst, right? Because they should know better by now. And yet, it's like they don't even realize any of these things that are in their own literature. And while I agree it's sometimes hard to see, once you realize what you see, if you know what is right and you don't do it, what is it, Watchtower apologists? A sin. You guys are swimming in sin unrepentantly, just like the Watchtower leaders. Look, I haven't even finished this quote. So they're talking about how if you truly appreciate their organization, you're going to be loyal to it. It's God's organization. It's His. It's not them. All these things they're teaching, it's from Him. They're attributing all these changes and false doctrine to God, not to their own failures. No other organization. When many abandoned Jesus Christ, He asked His apostles, "You do not want to go also, do you?" Peter replied, "Lord, whom?" Right? See, they know. They know the text, just like we quoted before. But then they change it. "Lord, whom shall we go away to? You have the sayings of everlasting life. We believe and have come to know you are the Holy One of God." Look at this next one. This next one's incredible. Watchtower 1970. This is the last one I'm going to read, and then we're going to get to our primary show. The second man mentioned in Nouvel Observateur represents those Catholics and Protestants, right? Not the Watchtower, but all these other Christians who stay with their church because they do not know where else to go. They have been taught that their church represents God. You know, exactly like the Watchtower teaches they represent God. That it's His organization. As we just read right here. But here they're criticizing Catholics and Protestants for the same thing. They have been taught that their church represents God and they do not want to turn away from Him. They're basically saying right here that Catholics and Protestants in this 1970 January 15th Watchtower, page 39, which comes first, your church or God? And they start out criticizing the Catholics and Protestants for staying with their church because they don't know where else to go. Right after they just, or later, a couple years later, they say, where else would we go? Right? They do the very thing they're hypocritically criticizing other groups for. They have been taught their church represents God, just like the Watchtower. They don't want to turn away from Him, just like the Watchtower makes themselves the equivalent of whom in John 6:68. They, that is Catholics and Protestants, disapprove of many church practices and doctrines, but they hope to reform their church within. Watchtower apologists who stay in the organization because you're so afraid of men that you can't even follow Matthew 18. Right here, they're telling you that they're criticizing the Catholic Church and Protestants for doing that same thing. No one said alias, alias, and I know who you are because you're too cowardly to use your real name, that Paul rejected the apostles. You just don't listen, right? You're not able to comprehend what I'm saying or even the text. Paul confronted the apostle and told him to stop doing it. You don't think he would have rejected Peter if Peter kept doing it? What does it say in Revelation 2:2? They found the apostles, the so-called apostles doing, and then found them to be liars. Do you think they just kept following a bunch of liars? It gets so ridiculous. Look at my comments right now. The attempts by Watchtower Apologists to breathe life into this dying organization that's collapsing all around them, that hypocritically condemns other groups for doing the exact same thing these cowardly Watchtower apologists are doing right now. They think they can work from within and reform it. The Watchtower of 1970 says what are you doing that for? If you're a Catholic and Protestant, oh yeah, of course they want you to stay and be quiet when they're involved. But when it comes to criticizing other groups, all you have to do is substitute them for these groups, and you'll know what you should do. Typical of these are the 744 French Catholics who in November 68 sent a long open letter to the Pope. In it they stated, today the Christian needs to live in a true church. Therefore, all that is false, contrary to the gospel, and scandalous within the church today wounds the Christian. Then followed a long list of grievances against the Catholic Church and its current teachings and practices. Yet, toward the end, these Catholics expressed their unconditional adherence to the Church by alluding to John 6:68, exactly like the Watchtower does here. And here. It's the exact same thing here. Stating, who could we go to? In her, the Roman Catholic Church, we find the one who has the words of eternal life. Look at that. They're criticizing the Catholics here, but also Protestants up here, right? For substituting who with the Roman Catholic Church. That's exactly what the Watchtower does. So the Catholics who are using the exact same arguments as the Watchtower apologists are criticized, and yet the Watchtower apologists are doing the very same things with the approval of the Watchtower. It's incredible. Can Christ dwell in a church where so much is admittedly false, contrary to the gospel, and scandalous? Do I even need to bring up scandals involving the Watchtower right now? You Watchtower apologists who are so cowardly you're afraid of them? I mean, they're all over the place, right? So it's ridiculous. You have the scandal involving pedophilia, obviously. But you also have, if you want to do a search for Jeffrey Jackson, a member of the governing body, and his testimony before the Royal Australian Commission, lying or telling the truth and then lying after, right? Because he says it would be presumptuous to say they are God's representative on earth. He says sole representative, but the question didn't ask that. Either way, they do believe they're the sole representative of God on earth. And he openly lied under oath. Or admitted he was presumptuous, right? You watched our apologists promoting a bunch of presumptuous men? Is that it? Well, then you're promoting liars. Under oath. After putting your hand on what I presume, at least in terms of what I saw, the 2013 New World Translation. That's a scandal, wouldn't you say? How could Christ dwell in a church with so much that is false in your organization today? So much scandal. You mean to tell me that it was okay to criticize Protestants and Catholics who are doing the exact same thing when it comes to John 6:68 that you're doing? I mean, even trying to reform it from within like you're doing and criticizing me for not doing? I mean, if you read this Watchtower of 1970, January 15th article, which comes first, your church or God, you're going to be shocked at the hypocrisy that they write about. And this is in the same article. This is on the next page. This is the last part, and then we'll get to our main show today. But I told you I had a few things for you. Thus, honest Catholics and Protestants are beginning to recognize the necessity of choosing between the church and Christ, the church and the gospel. Guess what, Watchtower Apologists? Former Watchtower people are doing this too. We're recognizing the necessity of choosing between the organization and Christ, the organization and the gospel. You want to criticize us? It's in your own literature that this is what you're supposed to be doing, that you're not supposed to be cowardly trying to change it from within, like the Catholics and Protestants were criticized in relation to the very text we've been reading about, John 6:68, which the Society reinterprets so that it applies to them, effectively claiming to be the Messiah again, just like they do when they claim to be the truth, while proclaiming the end is near, Luke 21:8. I can't think of another group that has the combined applications of claiming to be the Messiah in these ways and proclaiming those things than the organization, than the Watchtower. If you think there's another group out there that's not a fringe group, right, like I said, David Koresh or something like that, put it in the comments, right? I'll let that comment stay because I need to know. Who else is it today? What about all you second men who hope to reform your church from within? Watchtower Apologists, what about you second men? You hope to reform your church, your organization from within. This all applies to you. All of you. All of you Watchtower supporters and promoters are being humiliated by your own literature. Which comes first to you with you, Watchtower Apologists? Your church, your organization, or God? Completely trust us. Do not put your trust in nobles or the son of earthly man. Which is it going to be, Watchtower supporters? Indeed, what is the church of God? After the words quoted above, Paul wrote to sincere anointed Christians, you are the temple of the living God. As God saith, I will dwell in them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore go out from among them, go out from among them, and be ye separate. This is what we're doing, Watchtower Apologists who are afraid of men. You are the second men the Watchtower's writing about. It is not without interest that a Catholic commentary on Holy Scripture states that in this passage Paul shows that the union of the faithful to God involves a separation from false religion. Italics theirs. Precisely. You Watchtower Apologists, you need to go study the 1970 January 15th Watchtower article, Which Comes First, Your Church or God? It's basically telling you the same things I've been telling you for many of the exact same reasons that you've been rejecting for no good reason. What example did Paul set? Well, we talked about that in one of my last videos, didn't we? Galatians 1 and 2. We talked about it earlier in this show. So they're telling you to follow Paul's example. Watchtower Apologists, why aren't you confronting those whom you believe have been appointed by the Christ openly? Right? Paul said right in front of everybody. Because you're cowards. You are afraid of men. Just like Peter was before he was confronted by a real man who wasn't afraid of humans who lie. That one, what example did he set as a Pharisee and prominent member of the Jews' religion? He had persecuted the true church. He wrote, I persecuted the church of God, being more abundantly zealous for the traditions of my fathers. Did Paul, Watchtower apologists and supporters, please pay attention and read this article. Did Paul remain in the traditional church, the Jews' religion, and attempt to reform it from the inside? Like you Watchtower supporters are trying to get me to do? No. He considered that the only way to worship and serve God acceptably henceforth was to go out from among the Pharisees and become a part of God's true church, which at the time was a small, despised sect. So if the Christian witnesses of Jah in your eyes are just a small, despised sect, maybe you should join us, at least according to this Watchtower. One last part from this same Watchtower. Consequently, if your church teaches and does things contrary to the Bible and displeasing to God, your duty as a Christian is clear. Is it clear to you, Watchtower apologists, yet? Because it wasn't clear when I told you about it. That's clear from your follow-up comments. It wasn't clear when I read you from the text about it. Maybe it'll be clear from you if the Watchtower tells it to you. Your duty as a Christian is clear. Imitate Paul and serve the Father and your God within the true religion, which, not surprisingly, the churches often call a heresy. It's a great article. I highly encourage all of you Watchtower followers and supporters, and any of those who are trying to help them inside and use their literature, you need to read this article. It shows their hypocrisy in such clear detail. Better than anything I could have done, I think. So I wanted to share that with you, because the Watchtower supporters and apologists are swimming in fear. They can't confront anybody in the organization because they know they'll get kicked out. They know their family will look down on them or shun them. So the only thing blocking them I can see is this massive fear that they have. So I'm hoping, Watchtower apologists and supporters, this gives you a little bit of courage, right? Take this Watchtower with you if it helps when you go to your elders and others to confront them about their false teachings and show them here that you're just following the Watchtower. And of course, we all know they'll say that's old light, right? So you're never going to really know whether or not you're going to be able to use the literature, because it's either from God when they say it is or not when they say it is. It's always what they say it is. It's never what it says it is. It's never just what the text says. So you guys are in a lot of trouble. I really feel sorry for all of you. I know a lot of you want to do good and help people. I feel in some sense bad for you in that way, but at the same time I have to remind myself it's not my job to go around feeling pity for people who can read. And if not the Bible, your own literature you should be able to see. Same with the Trinitarians, right? They can read. So I don't need to go running around feeling too bad for them or for you. You know what to do. Let's see if you have the courage to actually do it.